Hey guys, welcome back to Big Shoulders. Sorry that I've been away. I've gotten some messages on the channel here. It's mostly been cult of film episodes that I've been doing with our man Justin, aka DJ Night Patrol. And that's really because it's a lot of fun. It's pretty easy, doesn't require a whole lot of prep other than watching a movie and so forth. Been really busy with 3 jobs now, which is great. We went through a real long period of being underemployed, and that has changed. So we're getting it in where we can. But yeah, I wanted to pop back in because I've been getting messages. What happened to Big Shoulders? Are you doing that anymore? What's going on? We enjoyed it, which really feels good because I didn't think the amount of views that I got warranted that kind of interest. So I'm glad you guys care about it as much as I do, because if you know anything about me, Chicago is a great passion of mine. It is my favorite city on earth. It is the city that has made me the guy that I am, and yeah, it means a lot to me. So part of the reason I've been away is because I really did not feel like the stuff that I had planned was really on par with the type of quality content that, one, I want to put out, and two, that I think that you guys would find interesting. Today is kind of a commentary episode, and I think you'll find it interesting. I do think digging deeper into some of the, what it's like to be a Chicagoan, what it's like to be from the city, how people view us, and all that. I definitely want to talk about that, but I also want to let you know that we finally have some things on the docket and scheduled in terms of new interviews. So we're going to have some new guests. We're going to have some old favorites. We will finally have some fucking on location stuff to show you. Yes, I realize I'm doing a podcast slash YouTube show about the city of Chicago, and I really have not been out on the street, being a man on the street and, hitting the concrete. And that's been a real problem for me. It's bothered the hell out of me. And so we're solving that. So there's going to be more, frankly, probably more interesting content to listen to and to look at. It's coming, guys. I promise. So today, what I wanted to talk about is it's kind of the bane of a Chicagoan's existence, especially when you do spend part of your time outside of the city, whether it be outside of the city in Chicago, in the greater, northern Illinois area, or across the country. And as many of you know, I'm an aspiring filmmaker, and so I split my time between Chicago and LA, and I've been in LA more because, this project of mine isn't going to happen unless I push it. And so I gotta be out there, and I gotta be, tilling the soil and getting these things together. And as a result, that's sort of pulled me away from doing as much Chicago content as I want to do. But I digress. So what I want to talk about today is really a matter of respect. I think just baseline respect. Part of this also, I think, has to do with, it just really blows my mind the extent to which so many people profess knowledge about a topic, a place, a person, when they don't know anything about it. And so what I wanted to hop on today to talk about with you guys is, one of my, this woman that I work for, who's a fantastic lady. I really like her a lot. She's a real person, incredibly hard worker. But she said something the other day that I just kind of had to about, and I was letting her know. I said, hey, I have set some time aside because I have family coming in from the Bay Area and LA to Chicago, and we're going to do our annual run through the city, paint it red, have a great time, enjoy all that Chicago has to offer. So I won't be available for about 5 days, and all good. And then I reminded her, I was like, by the way, I just want to make sure that those days are clear and we're good because Chicago. And she's like, oh yeah, don't forget your flak jacket. Don't forget your flak jacket because it's Chicago. And I just kind of let it roll right off my back because she's a nice lady. I'm happy to work for her. She's taken really good care of me. But it's one of those things. She's from the Northeast, and that's not an indictment. I love the Northeast. It's probably it's as beautiful as Chicago during the fall months. I love Northeast people. But she's never. My point is, she's never been to Chicago. I think she said maybe she was there once on a layover. But her response to me saying, I have to fly back home. Her response was, bring your flak jacket, because she knows so much about how dangerous Chicago is, despite the fact that she's never set foot there. And it's, again, I know it's par for the course as a Chicagoman, but I really want you guys to understand, especially those of you who have not visited Chicago, because I've done previous episodes where, and I'm not just selling just the good parts of Chicago. I would say that 99% of our city is safe. There are certain neighborhoods. By the way, neighborhoods you'll never travel to because you don't know where they are. You don't know what they're called. You don't know anybody there. So you'll never be in danger going to those places. And depending on what time of day you go to a certain neighborhood makes a difference too. Point being, it annoys me that there are so many people that have never been to our great city, people who have never spent significant time here, have never even thought to themselves to ask a question, what's it really like? Nobody asks that question. Very rarely do I get that question. And so I really made it one of my personal missions to educate people, because, they get to know me. And, again, occasionally people will be like, oh, so where at in the city? Or, anyway, all these questions. And they're kind of surprised. And what's really kind of been cool, I would say over the past decade, I have encountered people from outside of the States, specifically people from Australia and France that were coming through Chicago O'Hare, because it's an international airport, on their way to somewhere else, that in spending a couple days in Chicago completely changed their vacation plans, their holiday plans, and stayed in Chicago. And every single one of them is just blown away. One, by how clean our city is. You can eat off the streets. I'm not even kidding. My friends and family from places like LA, San Francisco, friends of mine from New York City are like, it's so clean everywhere. And it really is. Then they're surprised by how incredibly friendly we are, which, again, once we know that you're not from Chicago when you're visiting, every single one of us becomes an ambassador. We will give you 4 places to get great coffee, 5 places to, get dinner. What type of food do you like? Have you ever had an Italian beef? Have you ever had an Italian breaded steak sandwich from Rico Benny's? Have you ever taken in a Sox game, a Cubs game? Have you ever been to Humboldt Park? Do you know what a jibarito is? We're very proud of our city, and so we become these great advocates, these great ambassadors, and that really endeared these folks from outside the States to my city. And I really love those stories. But then I we'll always run into occasionally, not as much anymore, but it still happens with, regularity, people saying, like, don't forget your flak jacket. You ever been there? Nope, but I know all about it. Look at visiting Chicago, one, as a truly worthwhile time to spend. We have world-class museums, world-class architecture, a collection of architecture starting in downtown and branching through all sides of the city, the likes of which you don't see in very many American cities. Incredible depth, breadth, and diversity of food and people and art. It really is worth your while. My only request is that you visit Chicago the way you would visit a friend's house, or maybe you were invited to a party. And, how would you conduct yourself? Obviously, you'd go there respectfully. You wouldn't walk in presuming anything. You would go in, it's like, going in, it's like, okay, it's going to be a party. Let's, I'm going to have a good time. I want to experience people. I want to experience the food, the drink, all of that. But baseline respect, I think, really is a must. And I think part of the reason I have to emphasize this is because, unfortunately, Chicago is the most demonized city in the country, because whether it is mainstream media or like alternative conservative media, they only like to talk about the negative things. And I've done the research. Chicago isn't even in the top 25 most dangerous American cities anymore. And it's been a long time since we have. You know, you have places in the American South that are far more dangerous than Chicago. But it's stuck in people's heads that, oh, Chicago must be dangerous. Obviously, we have our history with gangsters, Al Capone. There's some pretty notorious history from the gangster period that was a result of prohibition. And you know, when you make things illegal that have a massive demand, gangsters are going to pop up. Organized crime is going to pop up. We haven't learned that lesson, that just because you make something illegal doesn't mean people stop wanting it, using it, wanting to produce it. Drug war. So there's that. But it is. I guess I could look at it as an opportunity with this employer of mine to share with her. You know, going forward, probably not a good idea to presume the worst when someone, you know, that you think highly enough of to put in your employ, that you know does a really good job. Maybe the first thing that shouldn't come out of your mouth when he tells you that he has to fly back home is, you know, flak jackets, guns, war zone, that type of thing. You really want to get the ire of a Chicagoan, you know, call it Chirac. Uh, I'm a big fan of Spike Lee. I really like his films. I didn't enjoy Chirac. I really felt that I understood what he was trying to do, but I don't think he understands, and probably doesn't care. Because again, for as much as I love New Yorkers and I love Angelinos, spent time and lived in both places, because they don't tend to spend a lot of time in Chicago, they don't care. They're oblivious. Again, as Chicagoans, we're used to that because we don't really focus outside of our own city. Chicagoans, we're far too busy and have historically been far too busy focusing on doing our thing, which is what has fortified our culture, I think, so beautifully, that we aren't looking to the coasts for trends or inspiration. We have plenty of our own. It's very much like Japan was closed off to the west under the Tokugawa for about 265 years. So that's, you round up, that's damn near 300 years. And what the Japanese ended up creating was this incredibly fortified, unique culture that did its own thing, created its own arts, its own unique way of life. And while certainly Chicago isn't isolated like the Tokugawa were, we do our own thing. We could take a lesson from New York and LA and be much better at hyping ourselves. No one sells themselves like New York City or LA. And, you know, Chicago, we don't, you know, we're getting better at that. There is a massive rise of really great influencers, people that are out and about hyping Chicago, and shows like The Bear, which are so beautifully done and are set in the restaurant industry of Chicago, are really opening people's eyes in a way that, I don't know, 10 years of podcasting could possibly have ever done. You know, they're really opening people's eyes to that, you know, Chicago is more than just some city in the middle of the country where there's some crime. So those are good things. But when you're going to Chicago, go with an open mind. Don't presume the worst, because it's not going to happen. It really isn't. Many of you will never get out of downtown, which is a damn shame, because while downtown is awesome, I love downtown. I love Michigan Avenue, especially around the holidays, you know, when it's all lit up. We've got Christmas trees all over the place, from the Wrigley Building to the Millennium Park, just all over. Water Tower Place. It's beautifully lit. It's one of the, you know, fall and winter, I think, are two of the best times really to visit Chicago, which would surprise people. But the point being, downtown is great. I don't think there's anything wrong with spending time there, because, you know, along that strip of Michigan Avenue, literally from the Sears Tower, which is spelled Willis, Willis Tower. We'll never call it Willis Tower. It will always be Sears Tower. At the south end, all the way to the north end, where you have the Hancock building, that entire strip is just filled with shops and museums and parks and restaurants and cafes that are world class, that I would put up against any city in the world. And I'm not saying that because I'm partial to it or I'm biased. You know, I've been to many different places, and it is absolutely world class. And again, you don't have to believe me. You know, the amount of Europeans, Australians, and others that have given Chicago a chance are always really pleasantly surprised, which, again, as a native, makes me feel good. But what's great is these people all just gave it a chance. They did not just believe every negative story that Chicago, that has been, you know, said about Chicago. And again, do your own research. Feel free to check me. But yeah, we're not even in the top 25 most dangerous cities in the U.S. anymore. And I think that that deserves to be acknowledged. But also, you know, don't say these things. You know, I would never, you know, and it's just me. I would never make presumptions about other cities. A city that I have never spent much time in that I really would like to explore and visit here in the U.S. is Miami. And it's crazy because I've met a lot of people, not so much in Chicago, more people in L.A. that have told me about Miami, and very few of them have anything nice to say. And you know, that pings my Chicago spider sense, because I know what it's like for someone to basically talk shit about your city when they, you know, have spent minimal time there, or didn't know where to go, didn't research it before they went, and just, you know, presumed things, or, you know, maybe didn't get out of downtown. You know, and occasionally I will see vlogs and videos on YouTube of this one European couple that I saw came to Chicago. They never left downtown, and the only two places that they dined at that made it into their video was Starbucks Reserve Roastery and Corner Bakery. You're in one of the top culinary capitals of the world, and you go to Starbucks and Corner Bakery. Like, young, dumb kids in their 20s that, you know, don't know anything, you know, don't know enough to research the city that they're visiting. Okay, fine. But yeah, it's get into the neighborhoods as well. Don't rent a car. Go in with an open mind. Feel free to look up food blogs, travel vlogs. There's a lot of great ones on YouTube, you know, and this channel included. Again, maybe I'm biased. I don't think I am. You know, I'll owe up to, you know, Chicago's problems in terms of, you know, the state of Illinois has a major pension shortfall. We sold all of our parking meters to Abu Dhabi like a decade ago. So none of that money comes into the city of Chicago. So that's a huge problem. The Illinois Tollway now collects money for, I believe, pension funds in Canada. That money is not coming to the people of Illinois. So yeah, we've made some boneheaded decisions. Well, we did. We elected people who made boneheaded decisions, and then we didn't hold them accountable. So, you know, we'll have to deal, you know, with that. And then, of course, yes, we do have gang activity, and there is crime, and it is heartbreaking. You know, I don't want to minimize that, but it's also the case that all cities have that. On a cultural level, I think those are cultural problems that can only be dealt with culturally. I'm sure there's probably some type of a role for government to solve, not solve, but maybe help that situation. And I think programs like Invest South and West that started under the last mayor, Lori Lightfoot, to spur investment and growth and building West and South in the city may help that. But you know, it's a complicated problem when it comes to, you know, gang violence and these kids getting into things, which, you know, it boils down to, is there a strong father in the home? At least it is for me. You know, as a guy whose father took off when he was 11 and whose mother was an addict, you know, I'm surprised I've made it as far as I have. And I feel very lucky because there's a lot of kids that didn't make it, out of their teens or out of their 20s because the parents didn't fulfill their moral obligation to parent the way they should have. But that's a topic for another time. My best advice to you as someone who maybe isn't as familiar with Chicago is, if you don't know about something, whether it's Chicago, whether it's, I don't know, Mexican food, whether it's Roman architecture, whether it is Japanese woodblock art, it's always a good policy that if you don't know about something, maybe don't say anything. I can't remember which Stoic philosopher it was. It says it is okay to not have an opinion. I don't know if that was Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus or Seneca, but one of those guys. You can always choose to not have an opinion. And it's something that I challenge myself personally. Again, partly because I'm from Chicago, where everyone seems to be able to shoot their mouth off about my city. Again, a city that they've never lived in, they've never spent time in, and probably never will, but they know all about it. There's nothing more frustrating than someone pretending or really claiming to know who you are and what you're like when they know absolutely nothing. So, if you wouldn't like someone to do that to you, apply that to obviously all other people that you encounter in the world, but apply it to places too. Apply it to cities, towns, neighborhoods. Anybody, especially today, anybody can say anything about anyone or any place, anywhere, ever, and not get checked for it, because the internet, social media has allowed people to become comfortable with talking mad shit about others and other places without getting checked for it. Which I think that was Mike Tyson who said that. And that's a guy who has a history of people talking about him and all that. And he's had a challenging life. He's made his own mistakes, but he's learned from them. And I think it's important to just be fair. Be a merciful, kind, thoughtful human being, whether it be with regard to the city of Chicago, your neighbors, people who maybe live differently from you. It's just a good policy, because it's entirely possible that, like my French and Australian friends who have come into the city and with no plans to stick around, we're so impressed by the friendliness, the cleanliness, the ease of movement on the CTA trains and buses. Again, don't rent a car. You don't need it. Chicago is very much like New York in terms of we're the only other true major metropolis in the U.S. that is connected by rail. And we have our elevated trains that also become subways, a really strong network of buses. There's no reason to rent a car because renting a car, I guess you can get good deals on it, but the parking, you're going to pay through the nose. And it isn't necessary. If you're willing to be, more patient, ride the train, ride the buses, especially the trains, you're going to get just a beautiful view of the city. Whether you're going out to Oak Park for the Frank Lloyd Wright tour, or you're going downtown to walk Michigan Avenue and stop at La Briola Cafe for some authentic thin crust Chicago tavern style pizza. Yes, that's what we eat. We do have deep dish, but that's not what we eat most of the time. Somebody should probably tell Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart, actually, you talk about somebody who, talks mad shit about Chicago. He really has a very weird preoccupation with Chicago deep dish pizza. And you'd think for a guy who at least pretends to be a journalist that he might, I don't know, crack a fucking book or Google it, and maybe he'd know that about 98 to 99% of the time we're eating thin crust pizza cut into squares called tavern style, as opposed to deep dish or stuffed pizza or pan pizza. Those are the other three styles of Chicago pizza. So we have multiple styles of pizza that we eat here. But yeah, that little factoid missed Jon Stewart and a lot of folks on the coasts. So, we love you. We absolutely love you guys. You're our cousins, but you can kind of be myopic dicks sometimes. So, there's, even now, for example, there's, New York is going through a difficult time, as is LA, which is my other home. And am I supposed to just pretend that, okay, now New York and or LA are these just unsavable, unsalvageable places that no one should ever go because they're being horribly mismanaged by bonehead politicians? No, they're both great cities. They both have their own flavors. They have their own cultures. They have their own unique spins on different cuisines and their own sort of unique architecture, artists, music. So because they're having a difficult time, we're just going to write them off and go where? I mean, there's lots of other places I guess you could visit, but I don't like writing off anyone. In addition to Miami, which I'm undeterred from, I really would like to visit. And if there's anybody out there from Miami who's watching, I'd love to get the inside scoop of where I should go, where I should visit, what I should see, what I should eat. Portland is another city that, again, people both in Chicago and LA that I know talking shit about Portland. Oh, it's this, it's that. And again, I know they like a lot of American cities went through kind of the ringer in 2020 with COVID and the lockdowns and stuff like that. But again, there's good people in Portland. My niece and her guy who recently married, they've been living up there for a few years. They love it. They're having a great time. I've asked them, I'm like, is there any truth to these horror stories that I'm being told about Portland? And she's like, no, we wouldn't. If it was as bad as what you're being told, Uncle, we wouldn't live here. And I'm like, exactly right. Exactly. It's people need to rub their brain cells together and really think that if Chicago was like scenes out of the Matrix, where everybody's just spraying all over the place, you would hear about it every day. You'd hear about the mass exodus from Chicago. You'd hear about all of that, and you don't, because that's not what happens there. It's not what happens in Portland. It's not what has happened in New York City. It's up to good people to hold their elected representatives in their respective cities responsible for doing their job, keeping people safe, keeping streets clean, keeping potholes filled, keeping the air conditioning in the schools going in the summer months, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, I know for a fact that there is more accurate information available about Chicago than there's ever been. We have incredible sort of, I guess you'd call them novice to amateur reporters and other influencers. 77 Flavors of Chicago are two of my favorite. You guys know they've been on the channel a couple times, hoping to have them back soon. You have the Chicago History Podcast, which does just a fantastic job of really opening up all the nooks and crannies of Chicago to not only people who aren't from the city, but people who are from the city, people who have lived in the city for decades. There's so much history. There's so much interesting facts and culture that I wasn't even aware of until I started listening to the Chicago History Podcast. You have incredible movements within the city, like Black people outside. We have people that they're taking control of their own neighborhoods, their own families, and getting out and making their neighborhoods, their parts of town better. They're not waiting for, an alderman to do it. And that's awesome. That's awesome. There is a greater spotlight, for example, on the south side of Chicago. So much of, and even still, so much of the content that you will find on YouTube, it tends to be north side centric, downtown centric, somewhat west side centric. The west side has changed a lot. So there's a lot of spotlight on like Wicker Park, West Loop, Fulton Market. But there's a whole part of town called the South Side that is culturally rich, filled with great people, incredible food, incredible history. And that's starting to bubble up. And, if I have anything to do with it, I'm going to try to be part of that, because it's annoying to watch the spotlight on the city. And so many times the South Side just kind of gets ignored. If it's not Chinatown, if it's not Sox Park, if people are like, where's that? Where's Canaryville? Where's Bridgeport? It's like, well, it's right there. Just take some time to look. So yes, guys, I'm sorry I've been away, but I didn't want to put out, frankly, hack content. I didn't until I really had I think I've probably emailed and or texted 50 people to try to get more guests on. And it's a slow going process because I don't have the numbers. Because sadly, 82% of you that watch the channel still aren't subscribed. So if you can do me a solid, hit that subscribe button, hit like, share, comment. Like it, hate it, I don't care. But help us out with the algorithm. That will help the channel grow, and it will help me to do more things. Again, I have no problem with spending money to make money. Does anybody make money on YouTube anymore? I don't know. I think you got to do like a million views before you can make $5,000. Whatever. We're doing it for the love of the game. So I have no problem spending money to do better content. It's just been, I'm literally ping-ponging from one end of the country to the other for different things. But we've got some man on the street location stuff that is coming up, some really fun interviews coming up, and I really appreciate you guys hanging with me. And so today, obviously I wanted to give you that update, but I really think it's important that if you're visiting a new city or something brings up a place you've never been, don't presume you know about it. In fact, just don't. It's okay to shut up. In fact, Chicago, this is how traumatized we are by constantly being talked shit about. We have an entire brand in Chicago that I want to give a shout out to. They make really great stuff. There's a company called Harebrained Designs, and they have a brand called STFU Chicago, which stands for Shut the Fuck Up About Chicago. And that's really, it's a homegrown brand, again, because we are so used to people pretending like they know about us, whether they're from just outside the city, outside the state, across the country. It's really important, I think, for your own development as a human being to learn to be first-handed. And what that means is to be first-handed means to be able to speak to something with a first person, as in your own personal experience, your own speak from experience, speak from your own personal knowledge about a given place, a given person, a given subject, as opposed to doing what most people do and behave second-handedly, which is, okay, everything you know about a given place, a given person, a given thing, all coming from someone else, and you having no direct contact, no direct sustained contact or experience with said place, person, or thing. Because I'm sure that all of you out there watching would never want someone to be running around and just talking mad shit about you when none of those things are true, or taking one aspect of your life, maybe a time when you had a weak moment, when the life really put the screws to you, and that was their interaction with you. And now they're going to take that one moment of exposure to you, and they're going to stretch that about your entire being. That's not fair. That's not just. So do unto others in that respect. And again, personally, I am happy to help anyone out there who's watching this. You want to plan a trip to Chicago and you want to avoid all the touristy stuff. You really want to get in with the best of what Chicago is: our people, our food, our drink, our culture, our art, our music, our museums. I am more than happy to help you. You can find me on Instagram at King Sing. It's KYNGSYNG. Feel free to direct message me there. I am happy to put an itinerary together for you. Happy to even meet you if you'd like, but I can help you to get the real deal Chicago, the Chicago that is not as covered, and give you just a really great trip, a trip to remember. So thank you guys again for watching. Again, if you wouldn't mind to like, subscribe, share, feel free, comment below. Love or hate, we'll take it, because it's all the algorithm. But yeah, just wanted to pop on and just share some of my recent thoughts of what it's like to be a Chicagoan in this world. And yeah, I think I may have, depending on how we set this up, I might have a really, really fun interview with a really, really big Chicagoan coming up for you all. And then certainly we're going to be doing some really cool on-location stuff. So hang in there with me, guys. and I promise I'll make it worth your while. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.